put yourself in a position where you can't retreat, where it's do or die, sink or swim. Here's what you'll find out. You'll develop incredible swimming skills. You'll find yourself stroking unlike you've ever seen before. Through the inspiration of desperation, you'll become more creative than ever before. Throw your whole self into it. All you can do is all you can do. And all you can do is enough. But make sure you do all you can do.
Welcome to another episode of Burning the Ships presented by 608B Capital. And today I am sitting down with Mr. Tim Slivka. And for any of you who follow along, by the time this comes out, you will have heard my episode with Tim's wife, Erin. I don't know that Tim is going to deliver as strong of an episode as Erin did, but I'm sure you're up for the task. But, y'all have heard that story by now, what Tim and Erin have gone through with their daughter, Ayla, and a lot of the details around that. And we'll certainly get into that a little bit. But I want to bring Tim on because I got to know him through a buddy of his that runs a mastermind that I'm in, and that's Tim Bratz. And he was in Boston. And before I even knew their story about their daughter and all of that, Tim took the stage and talked about a lot of sales psychology around, and not just sales psychology, around like emotional intelligence and things like that. And number one, he was a rock star on stage. He really shared a good message, a lot of value, and he was speaking to a lot of the same ways of thinking I have when it comes to sales and just psychology and stuff like that. So I wanted to bring him on and kind of talk through that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tim, and tell the folks who you are, kind of your development in this space and where you're at and all that good stuff. And we'll go from there.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate that kind intro. And yeah, to that point, I'm probably, like most great husbands, I'm going to be second fiddle to my wonderful wife, but bottom line is I've been in sales for my entire career. I started with Eli Lilly back in, I think it was like 2007, shortly after I graduated from college. And I had a strong career there as a sales representative. I went to other pharmaceutical companies, but for the last 10 years of my career, I've been at Abbott Laboratories. So 17 years really focused in healthcare professional sales. And what I've done is basically been a sales rep. I've also held various sales leadership roles throughout that time. And really where I found my niche in this latest role that I'm in is with sales leadership and sales development and sales training. And one of the components that Abbott actually instilled in me early in my career was this kind of a concept of emotional intelligence and the value that provides when you're going to be in front of a customer. And one of the things I found most interesting about that was that it's really not about what happens in front of the customer as much when it comes to what emotional intelligence can really bring to the table, but it's more so what it brings to all of your relationships. And as I think about where you apply the most emotional intelligence in your entire life, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be at home with your family. And ever since becoming a father, you see then that it's so much more important to have strong emotional intelligence in front of your children as well. And now I got to put my hand up and honestly say, I'm not always the best at this, right? I think like most people, it's easy to let your emotions get the best of you at various times, especially when you go through what you mentioned my family and I have gone to, right? You can be really, high strung on a couple different things and it's easy for you to snap. But it's so important that you're able to really understand your own emotions because the way that you're feeling is going to have an impact on everybody around you. So I've really taken that and tried to relay that back into our sales training department here at Abbott and really do things that can be beneficial for our reps to improve their relationships with customers, improve their relationships with teammates, as well as their own family members. And it's something that I've just become really passionate about.
Yeah, I love it, man. When I started, so out of college, I did a couple little odd jobs, but once I settled into my career at like 23, it was with an insurance company that I went on to stay with for 18 years, 17 plus years, and left that job about a year and a half ago. But when I was 23, or maybe about a year into it, like I was pretty good at sales. Just I had the gift of gab. I could talk to anybody, so that just naturally led to sales. But I remember one of our trainers, actually it was a lady from the HR department, came in and spoke to the sales force one day about emotional intelligence. Now I'm 23, I'm cocky at that time,
Yep.
very little humility, and I'm sitting there, as were several of us younger reps, rolling our eyes at some of the stuff she's saying, like, oh, that's woo woo and all that stuff. But as I progressed and matured, and I look back, and I can tell you books she recommended, I can tell you specific things she talked about around like meditation and things like that, that at that point were so beyond what I even thought was a priority. And now they're like staples in my life, you know?
Yep.
So you're speaking to something that I think a lot of folks kind of brush off when the psychology around all of this. So I'd love for you to dive in to some of the tactical things around emotional intelligence that can benefit someone in sales and beyond. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to you, when I started my career, it was right around the same age. And some of the feedback I first got from my first sales training manager was, you know, that you're cocky and that you think you know it all, and that you got to, like, you know, regulate your own know-it-all mentality, and maybe let some other people around you in the room answer a question once in a while, you know? So I get it. But, you know, I think you can take that and really, if you start to think about emotional intelligence, break it down into what is it, right? It's got these kind of two core competencies: personal competencies and social competencies. And on the personal front, and where it really all starts, is with self-awareness. And self-awareness is really understanding your own emotions and how they're going to make you feel and how they're going to make you react, but understanding kind of the why something may be happening. And a lot of those emotions are really going to manifest themselves in some physical ways. You know, oftentimes you'll see that with somebody that's maybe nervous if they step up on stage. I remember actually being at that Legacy Family event, and there was a couple different people that, you know, you guys as a group of Legacy family members know, like, they just hate that spotlight being put on them, right? But that's somebody that you guys now have some social awareness to know that that person does not like getting on stage, but they know inherently that being on stage is just not for them. And what it makes them feel physically is, you know, maybe their heart starts racing, maybe they start sweating visibly up there, and they know it. So, but knowing that allows you to kind of use the second component of the personal competencies, which is that self-management. You know, and then what they're able to do is recognize their own feelings and their own emotions with their self-awareness to then better regulate and manage that emotion when they do get up there in front of others. And sometimes it's just as simple as acknowledging that, hey, right now I'm nervous, right now I'm frustrated. And sometimes you can do something like that if you're going to be up on stage and just say it out loud. And it's like you can watch the audience kind of say, oh yeah, I'd be in that same boat too. Like, I get that, you know. But it also is a way for you to maybe before a sales call or something, give yourself the little pep talk that you know you need, and recognize how you're feeling, what you're going to do, and be able to kind of be one in that moment to be able to know how to handle that emotion.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, there's the second set of competencies, which are those social competencies. And those are made up of social awareness and relationship management. So being able to know in the kind of like in the social scene, oftentimes you can equate it to something like an iceberg, and you can see what's on top. And those are some easy things to pick out, like, you know, what's going on out in a social situation, what you're hearing from different people, if they're speaking a different language than you. Those are all things that are easy to pick up on, right? The tone. But what you might not be able to see is kind of what's going on underneath the surface with somebody, you know. And I think I can use myself as a really good example. As my family and I were going through all the things we were going through with Ayla, you know, I still had to go to work in the middle of all of that. And I got that on my mind. And I'm trying to come in and be my best self at the office. And it's really difficult to do when you got all that stuff that's going on below the surface. So some people know what's happening and they can see I've got different emotions that I'm probably wearing on my sleeve at the time. But what they might not really know is what's actually happening with, you know, I was just at the hospital in the morning going to radiation with our daughter or something. And maybe that's why I would snap a little bit more quickly than I might otherwise. Or, you know, it might elicit some sort of like frustration or sadness and things that then, would just be a normal conversation. And all of a sudden, I'm reacting a certain way that's probably not normal. For somebody else on the other side of the table, they don't know what's happening. So social awareness is a little bit more than just what you can see, but it's your ability to really be able to read a room and recognize what's happening below the surface as well. Because at the end of the day, that all comes back to this fourth component, the most important component of emotional intelligence, that relationship management. And relationship management is probably the hardest thing for anybody to really harness and become really good at, because in order for you to develop really good relationships, you actually have to have a really good handle on the other three competencies of emotional intelligence, that self-awareness and self-management, as well as that social awareness.
Yeah. I love how you tied all that together, and I've got a couple thoughts. And this is kind of way I roll with these. So, like as you're talking, I've got a million questions or examples I can think of. What you mentioned about the physical nervousness of getting up in front of people, right?
Yeah.
And I think back, and man, I was real young when someone told me this. But it was before I was a teenager, and I don't remember what it was. It might have been something at church where I had to go up and talk or say a line or something like that. And I remember feeling like days before it was coming, I'd feel that anxiety, my heart beating every time I think about it and shaking a little bit. And then it was somebody in the church. I remember them telling me, and this sticks with me to this day. They said that what you're feeling is that same feeling that you feel when you go up to home plate in the last inning, getting ready to hit the ball. It's the same feeling, but you view that as excitement. Like, I'm excited for this opportunity. Whereas you're looking at this as something you're scared of, but it's the exact same adrenaline that you're feeling. Try to look at it with excitement rather than fear. And ever since then, man, when I get a chance to speak to people, I think back to my childhood, that person, like that feeling I'm getting, the heart pounding, like I'm excited, I'm not scared. And It was just that little shift in what you mentioned, self-awareness of, it's the exact same feeling. It's the emotions of excitement, but we are interpreting it as fear, and it kind of paralyzes us in some degree. So I think a lot of people go through that. The other thing you mentioned is like when you were going through all the stuff with Ayla or anything in your life that might be stressing you. I watched a video one time it was a video that the Cleveland Clinic put together, and it was no words spoken. It was just music playing, and it was a camera following people through a hospital. And as the people walked by and kind of nodded to each other, put a little bubble over their head. This is Marie. Marie just found out her dad has pancreatic cancer. And Marie just walked by and kind of nodded her head. Then it'd go by a little kid in a wheelchair, just found out they are, whatever. And it was about a 5-minute video. And it goes to your point of that awareness to realize that we don't know what anybody's dealing with. Everybody's dealing with something in their mind, and whether they share it or not, or whether you know about it or not, you got to have that social awareness to know that we're all going through it in some degree, and you talking about that just made me think of that video. So
yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to the self-awareness piece, right? Yeah. Like it is social awareness, because you got to think, all right, what's happening, but you don't see what's happening with somebody. You can be in the hospital, kind of using that example, walk through somewhere, and people don't just hang out in the hospital because they want to be there.
Yeah.
So you got to think like something's got them in this place, whether it's them or a family member or a friend, and it's nowhere they probably want to be. So if you're in a space like that, and all of a sudden you see like somebody's kind of not in a great mood, it's you can quickly put together like, oh, well, where I'm at, the location of that I'm literally physically standing in, is probably leading to this person being upset about something that's happening upstairs on one of these floors. Maybe they're in the cafeteria or something, but that you take that and you just put it maybe in a grocery store, and you see somebody who's like kind of going off on the cashier or being a jerk to somebody, and it looks like they're being a jerk. And you're probably thinking, this person's not a good person. There are a lot of other words you're probably thinking
right.
too, but at the end of the day, where you're probably saying that's not a good person, but there might be something that is going on in their life that leads them to be that way in that moment. And it's not a good reaction to whatever just happened. It's not maybe appropriate, but at the end of the day, there's a reason that they are acting the way that they're acting. And more likely than not, that person you're seeing that looks like a jerk is actually probably a really good person at home, and they're just having a bad moment. So being able to have like that social awareness coupled with like the self-awareness of like, maybe I shouldn't approach that person today, or say that this person's a jerk, or do something about it. Like, I don't know, you got to be able to use it yourself and kind of, and put yourself in somebody else's shoes that you don't even know what's happening. Just know like there's something else.
Well, all that, and also the awareness to know that, if you're going to judge that person on that moment, right, they're how they're handling that moment. This is how I want anybody I encounter to judge me on any of my worst moments. Like, there are times I make emotional reactions to my son sometimes, who just gets me so heightened, like just because of his behavior or choices or whatever, where I might snap and I might yell at him or something like that. And if I look back on that, if somebody could only judge me in that one snapshot of me losing my emotions, they'd probably think I'm a horrible person. I'm not a horrible person. And that goes exactly to your point, so.
Yeah, I think we all hate to be judged by our worst moments. We all have them, but it's the ability at times to be able to then also say you're sorry and do the right things by somebody else. And it's not easy. Your emotions can run hot, they can run cold, you can shut somebody out, but at the end of the day, you got to be in tune with that. And the only way to get there is to kind of study a little bit of this and pay attention to it. Because if you don't know and nobody's there to be like an accountability partner in this, whether it's a friend or a spouse or a coworker, you're not going to improve in your ability to manage your own emotions or your relationships with other people. And the only people that suffer are typically those that you're working most closely with, or your family and friends.
Yep. So now let's tie all this into sales. Cause I know that's kind of where you get like in the weeds with all this, is training this to help your reps be better at, what they're doing and what their jobs is. So how do you tie these together?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you think about any sales call, it's a relationship. You say people buy from people they like. That's true to some degree, but also people buy from people that provide value. And what we really train our reps to do is to be able to, what we do in medical sales. We'll kind of take a step back here for a second. Medical sales, you oftentimes walk into a hospital or into a doctor's office, and they're not expecting you. You don't always have an appointment. I'd say 1 out of every 10 times you actually have a scheduled appointment where you're going to sit down and talk with somebody. So you're entering into their environment, not really knowing what's happening within their day. You can go in and meet with maybe a receptionist or somebody that's going to give you a little bit of input. And then you got to take those tiny little inputs and be able to think really quickly on your feet to apply, how should I judge and react to this type of an environment? And you also got to understand that these are healthcare professionals treating people who are sick. So there's some emotion tied to that. You might be walking into a cancer center to go talk to somebody, and the person that they just left an appointment with before they come talk to you is somebody that they either just gave a diagnosis to, they just told them that their prognosis doesn't look good, or maybe it's actually sharing news with a family member that the person has passed. So the reason why the emotional intelligence is so important when you go into sales is that you've got to be able to really read people. You've got to be able to understand what may be happening within that office for all these different people, including the patients that are in that office, and be able to have a really strong reaction yourself to know, like, what should I do with what I'm seeing and observing? Because so much of your emotion is going to come from what you're able to take in with those 5 senses. And most of the time, they're not going to come out and tell you, like, I'm having the worst day ever. I'm having a great day. This is the perfect time to talk to me. Most of the time, it's not a great time. So you've got to be able to judge, do I take up 5 minutes? Do I give this person a 30-second kind of high level detail on the information I want to get to? Or do I just walk away and say, you know what, today's not the day? Because you don't get to necessarily find new customers when you do what we do in healthcare sales. The doctors in the area are the doctors. You got to go back there. That's your opportunity for business. So being able to understand what's happening, read the room to make the right decision, to best manage that relationship, it's the only way that you're going to ever even give yourself that opportunity to make a sale. So I always say, like, we can train you all the things on our products, the features, the benefits, the patients they could provide better beneficial outcomes to. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to actually talk to you and you don't have a strong relationship, you'll never get the shot on goal that's required for you to do that. So it's all about being likable, and people buy from the people they like. But again, it goes back to, like, people buy from the people that provide them the most value, and they're not going to give you time to provide that value if you don't have a strong relationship.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So I think, a lot of stuff comes to mind, because I'm sure you've seen it as well, but like there's so many different types of personalities that find success within sales, right? You have very aggressive salespeople that aren't going to take no for an answer, and they're going to be very pushy. They're probably not going to build the best relationships, but a lot of times they make the sale because the person just wants them to get out of there, and
Yep.
You've got that extreme all the way to the person that's probably, and I was this way. I wasn't the most comfortable cold calling. I know I had to do it as a part of my job. I was more comfortable slow playing everything, right? I want to get to know you. Let me know about your family. And I genuinely, because it was real to me. I am not, that's just not who I am to sell a widget. I want you to like me, know me, trust me. And then I have this value I can sell to you. If you'd like to buy it from me, great. I'd love that. And so you got those two extremes and everything in between. Kind of go through how, like, you package this up to touch all the extremes, and how you deliver that to your sales reps or anybody else that is, receiving it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when it comes down to this, like, emotional intelligence component of all of this, it doesn't matter what type of sales professional you are. I'm sure you've heard of things like, DISC assessments and things like that, kind of categorize people into these different buckets based on their personality type. But, emotional intelligence isn't really like about your personality, and it's not necessarily about your IQ either. Because those two things, personality and IQ, they're not something that you can necessarily change over time. That kind of is who you are. Your personality is really developed when you're in your kind of like from the time you're like 6 to the time you're in your early 20s, and your IQ is pretty much the same from the time you're 7 on. So those you're kind of stuck with. But the emotional intelligence piece is really great because you actually can train your brain to react very differently to the way that you kind of react to different emotions. So I think what I like about emotional intelligence as compared to different things like personality assessments is that it's something that you can actually work on if you start to understand more about how emotions make you feel and how those emotions make you react and how your emotions impact other people around you. So it's when we talk about this for like packaging it up for the right salesperson, what we always do is say, like, it doesn't matter what type of salesperson you are. I mean, you can be the type of sales professional that creates a transaction, sells that widget, and then moves on and never has to have that relationship again. Or you can be the type of salesperson that sounds like you really were, which is somebody who wants to develop that meaningful relationship. And it's only going to benefit you to have strong emotional intelligence because you can either use that relationship that you've built for a one-time transactional process, or you can use that relationship to have a long-standing, meaningful relationship that you'll come back to the same well over and over again and find repeat business opportunities. But what it really does for you is it allows you to ensure that you're developing a really strong relationship with everybody, regardless of one time meeting them on the street and you're moving on, or you're staying with them for the longevity of a career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, for me anyway, because this, like I said, early on, it wasn't anything I thought about. It really, things started to click with me when I started having kids. My daughter's 13 now. So that's when, obviously that children mature a lot of people. And it certainly did for me. But I started connecting the dots, and you alluded to it right from the beginning of all these principles apply at work just as much as they do at home, and maybe even more at home, and my coworkers or my clients or prospective clients, I'm around them for my job. I've got to bring that good emotional energy. But when I go home, if I throw all that good stuff that I'm trying to practice that you're teaching aside, and I'm grumpy because I'm not meeting my numbers, or I'm just stressed, I'm tired, then those are the people that matter the most. And I'm not applying these same tactics and things that I'm learning to them. But yeah, and Tim, we had a slight technical difficulty there, but we're back on it now. And I was just kind of covering the point about like the light bulb for me of realizing that, these same principles that you're teaching apply most importantly at home,
Yes.
and I would imagine a lot of the folks that you're training it to, and yourself, you've seen this over the years,
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think one of the things that we talk to when we talk about this training is actually getting people to think about the things that really happen to them as like a trigger event. And I think, in today's society, you always hear that phrase, right? Like, oh, they're triggered. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that something has elicited some sort of emotional reaction, a strong emotional reaction to something that they just experienced. And I always use the example for me as I don't know, if those of us that have kids like you and I, like there's things that set you off. So for me, it's this: I've had a long day. I've been at the office for, 9-10 hours, and I'm coming home, and I'm kind of uptight about like having things organized. I'm a type A personality. Well, I come home, pull in the driveway, and what do I see? Every single one of our bicycles, scooters, balls, all over the driveway, the yard, in the garage, and I can't park where I'm supposed to park. And I can feel my blood pressure start to rise. I can feel just the frustration. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to explode. Like, Erin and the kids, what are they doing? Like, you can't just put stuff away. Why can't we keep the house organized? I swear it's all the time, That's the stuff that starts going through my mind. And, the reality of it is, like, I should probably be thinking like, maybe they had a great day today. It looks like they had a lot of fun, But what happens is if I don't have that moment to pause and have some sort of positive self-talk, like, all right, it does look like they had a good day. I get out of the car, I clean up all the mess, my blood pressure continues to rise, my frustrations continue to kind of pop out of my shirt. And ultimately I walk into the house, and then instead of greeting the family with a hi, how you doing? I've missed you all day. It's so great to see you. Tell me what you guys did. I erupt with, why can't we just clean up? What's with the mess outside? And then I don't think that usually leads to a very nice, like, let's sit down and have dinner together type of evening. Usually that leads to me being in the doghouse with both my wife and my kids.
Right.
But it's being able to recognize, like, all right, something has triggered me, but there's things you can do that are going to allow you to have a better reaction. And a lot of times it's just being able to pause. Like in my situation, something I could do if I see that mess, buy myself some time, right? Like, get back in the car, maybe do a loop around the neighborhood, have a quick conversation with myself about all the things I mentioned earlier, like some positive self-talk, like, looks like the wife and kids had a great day today, and then come home instead of just walking in and exploding on everybody else. But those are the kind of things that I think come back to life for me most often, is that, you can use all this at work. And I think it's actually easier to use your emotional intelligence at work, because you kind of know that if you had a reaction like that professionally in an office setting or with a customer, it's, there's going to be some sort of repercussion. And it's a lot easier at home to kind of say, like, yeah, well, whatever, you all love me for who I am, and this is who I am. And, but those are the relationships that ultimately mean the most to you. And you need to cherish that and value that. And you need to use it at home more so than you use those skills at the office.
Yep. And you're someone, you and Erin y'all have experienced what most parents typically use to help themselves, get perspective around those situations, like this could all not be here, and that type of thing, and that, like, I tell myself sometimes the same thing, like when things are frustrating me, it's kind of like, oh, you're going to blink and it's going to be gone, or you're going to miss it when they're adults and
Yep.
stuff like that. And sometimes we're like, no, there's certain things I am not going to miss when they're adults, but you guys have lived through it. And now you're on the other side of like that being true. Like it, for one of your children, it's not there anymore. Right. And and that I want to segue now into that a little bit, because here you are, the guy that's going around the country for this sales organization, preaching this message of emotional intelligence. Probably a lot of like how to handle adversity, or how to get around hurdles and stuff like that in life and in sales and all this stuff. And now you're the guy, a couple of years ago, that got faced with it,
Yep.
like personally, and with your family, and it really I can imagine, put everything you've been preaching to the test for yourself in a big way. And I'll let you go wherever you want with this, Tim, but I'm curious to know the experience in teaching all of this for so long and practicing it, at kind of, I'll call it a low level compared to what you were up against in real life. But how did that experience through all this practice and teaching help you get through when it came to reality with your family?
Well, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Is kind of the best way to start that. It's a big question to unpack a little bit. And I've thought about that as I was kind of preparing for the conversation we had in Boston. And I think that one of the things that stands out to me, which is actually funny that it comes from this type of a silly movie, but there's a Zac Efron and like Michael B. Jordan movie with Miles Teller from years back that's called I think it's called That Awkward Moment. And there's a quote in there from one of the characters that says, relationships are just about being there for somebody. And I think that I'm going to come back to that quote, but what it really means to me though, is like, when you think about what we went through, we had so many families around us, so many friends, colleagues that were there for Erin and I and for our family in this really, really difficult moment that no one should have to go through. And, we were enduring this for 10 months of treatments. And then, after that, when she passes, there's now a lifetime that you have to live without your daughter. But all these people that are there for you, friends, family, coworkers. And really what it says is like, they're all coming there to be there for us in our weakest moment. But if I really think about why were those people there for us, it's in all the different walks of life that they were there for us from, really comes down to the relationships that my wife and I have built with so many other people. And it's not a moment to pat myself on the back, but what I am saying is that because of the time that I've taken to invest in developing strong relationships with so many other people, that's why they showed up for Erin and I in our toughest moment. So the perspective that I have on all of that really is, it's so important that you develop these strong relationships with everybody you meet, and that you are able to have strong emotional intelligence to be able to allow yourself to develop those kind of relationships. Otherwise, people won't be there for you, in your weakest moments. And I think that was sort of what happened when we went through this for us, was we realized, wow, we've got an unbelievable community of people around us that are just such great people. And you also have to pause and thank yourself, like, wow, we've done a good job of really developing good relationships, but you don't get there without also taking the time to invest in them. And, as we've moved around the country for different opportunities I've had with my career, you have friends that are close, like in proximity, and then you move and they're no longer close in proximity, but it takes effort. It takes dedicating time and energy to maintaining those relationships. And, in today's world, with all the different great technology you have at your fingertips, it's easy to do that. You can text different people, you can do things, but you got to get beyond that. And, you and I kicked this conversation off before we were on camera talking about golf trips that we take with different friends, right? Like, those are the kind of things that you got to say yes to in life. You got to be able to go do those things. You got to carve out time for family vacations with your family, but also with your friends. And, you got to take time to get the coffee with a coworker. That's not just a conversation about work,
Yeah.
and go a little deeper. And I think that's what we've really learned through this process, is that everything comes down to relationships, but at the end of the day, the relationship is about being there for the person when they need you. And I hate that I'm quoting that awkward moment as the thing for this, but like that movie and that line has always stood out to Erin and I as like such a meaningful one, and we never realized how important and how true it really is until we went through our own journey.
Yeah, man. And I want to encourage everybody hearing this, if they haven't heard Erin's episode, I want everybody to go listen to that to get a little more insight on, all the details, because she did a very good job walking us through everything. There was one thing I mentioned to Erin, in that conversation, like as a father, as a husband, as a man, a lot of the emotions she dealt with as a mother, I can't relate to. Right. And so I can hear them, like, man, that I can't imagine that kind of thing. But I'm curious, from your perspective, you're the man, you're the one. I mean, seriously, like,
yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It's like you carry a burden for your
right.
family.
And I've got to make sure, and I've got to show up, and I got to keep showing up through all my emotions don't matter right now, and all of that stuff. And I can kind of go there in my head. Fortunately, both of my children are healthy, and we haven't been through anything like this, but I think about it often. And I've really been thinking about it since I've met you guys, and I've heard the story, just how precious moments are. But from your perspective as the husband, the father, the man of the house, the one that has to be there to support everybody, how did you wrestle with that as you went through it? And I would imagine it's kind of what you just touched on, is you had so many people around you. But I'd love to just hear you dive into that a little bit more, how you got emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, the leaning on the other people around you and accepting help. So many people reach out and say, what can I do? And, really there's nothing that anybody can truly do. But what I've learned is that people want to do things for you, and you have to actually allow them to do things for you, because I guess people oftentimes feel like they need to do something, and it's not necessarily always for you. It's for them too, right? Like they want help. So accepting help is actually something that may be difficult to do. I know it was difficult for me. And accepting people saying, like, can we do something for you and your family, like create an experience for you all to cherish together, and for Ayla to bring her some joy and get some excitement out of. And you always just want to be like, no, don't do that. We appreciate the thought. That's all that matters. But no, don't. But people wanted to. So just like embracing that and saying yes, instead of saying no all the time, just actually starting to say yes to different things was really important. But I think also, like, going back to, like, as the father, the husband, like the man of the house and man of the family, your goal is to provide for your family. And like, I was still working through all of this, so I had to kind of compartmentalize. And I think the ability to do that is what actually got me personally through all of this. You're dealing with all sorts of emotions, the emotions of your daughter, the emotions of your other children, the emotions of your wife and your family around you. There's grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like that too, that are all impacted by this. But I still had to go through life and be there for them, be there for my team, at work, and then, be there to continue to thrive professionally. And I think in order to be able to do that, it was really important that I was able to kind of put each of these little buckets of my life into these compartments. And when I was in one of those compartments, focus on that one, be there and present there. And what it ultimately meant is that I needed to dedicate more time to the family buckets than I typically would in a given week. And then, less in the work bucket. But when I'm in the work bucket, I needed to be all in there and focused. And that was the hardest thing for me to do mentally. But it was about trying to put the emotions away for a little bit so that I could focus on things over here. And then when I went home, put the phone away, put the computer away, be there, present with the family for those moments. And you got to be able to do that. I think as somebody that's got to be the provider for the household and for the family, you got to be able to find ways to do that in a meaningful way for everyone around you.
Man, you're speaking to something that, again, I've been very fortunate in my life. I haven't really in my childhood, I had a lot of difficulties with my father and stuff like that. But as an adult, I've been very fortunate not to have to go through really any trauma or anything like even near what you guys have been through as a parent. But one thing that I tried because I know eventually something will happen that's going to derail everything we've got going on, right? Everybody has to go or typically goes through something, some form of adversity, personally, business, financially, whatever it is. But for years, I've tried to create a habit of like training my mind to find good in every situation, no matter how bad it is, right? And when I hear Erin and I hear you tell y'all's story and then the things that have come in the wake of that, so like, and the legacy that you guys are continuing to help Ayla build, right, through the foundation, and how many folks and families that is going to help. You know, y'all hate that you had to go through that, right? You hate it,
of course,
but it happened. And now with that, and you guys taking this mentality of, okay, we're going to do something with this. We're going to carry this legacy on. And number one, the foundation and all the good y'all are doing with that. Again, go back to Erin's episode to hear more on that. But number two, you just talked about presence. Now, had you not gone through this difficulty, you'd probably still be not very present or as present as you'd like to be, right? It's something I struggle with on a daily basis. Getting home, putting the phone away, playing with my kids and looking them right in their eyes and being there every moment, having deep conversations with my wife where it's just her and I. And like you and Erin are getting ready to, what you said, in a week or so, y'all are going to Kentucky and going on, you know, you're going to be present there. And I think a lot of that has been, if I'm not mistaken, enhanced because of the trials you've been through. Is that
it's a totally fair statement to make. Yeah. I mean, it's the hardest thing to do is to really truly be present. And I still struggle with that today, you know, because we're pulled in a lot of different directions. I mean, even now, like all the good that we're trying to do with the foundation does add another layer of things that we've got to stay focused on. And those are extra emails, extra time, extra things that come in that you got to be something to somebody for. And it's actually even more difficult now to stay present than it even was before. But this new level of perspective we have on the importance of it does make it extra important to focus on, you know, but nothing is easier, and we're not necessarily better at it. We're just more cognizant of the fact that we need to do our best in that regard, to compartmentalize everything and be present in this moment for this person at this given time and focus on them individually. And that's, you know, and sometimes individually means your whole family too. But, you know, the point is it doesn't get easier, but it does allow, this whole experience has allowed us better perspective on what's important and what you put your time and energy towards.
Right. Yeah. And I think another variable to y'all's situation that I find interesting, and I talked to Erin a little bit about this as well, but as y'all were going through all of this, y'all also brought another daughter into the world, right?
Yeah,
like that,
yeah, we did.
And so that y'all, I mean, you couldn't just forget about everything because you got two other kids, right? And so you have to continue parenting them. But I asked Erin this, and I want to get your thoughts on it. How old is your youngest daughter now?
Yeah, her name's Aspen. She's going to be 2.5. Well, she is 2.5. She's going to be 3 in November, and our son Asher is going to be 7 in November as well.
Yeah. I'm curious, how much of Ayla do you see in Aspen?
Oh my goodness, it's incredible. Yeah. She's like a mini me of Ayla. It's wild.
Right, and I think that's a blessing too, man. Like that's a piece of it that, you know, it as you're getting and trying to find positive and all that. I mean, that's still a little bit of her legacy there, you know.
For sure, you know, that'll carry on. I mean, the Ayla Foundation and our children will be the legacy that Ayla has left behind, and there'll be a lot of good that all of us and our kids will do in her honor. But you know, she was a remarkable little girl who left a massive footprint on this earth, and you know, it's terrible that she's not here with us. But you got to always kind of stay positive and think about, what was her purpose? She was here for a reason. She's going to have an impact on so many people. And at the end of the day, while she's not here, her life is beautiful and her legacy is even more impressive.
Yep. Yeah. No, well said. Well said. So, and again, I think it's an interesting kind of case study to see in your particular situation, because again, you're the one preaching emotional intelligence. That's your job. You're training people on it. And then you get hit with something harder than anybody you're training has been through, or most people, I would imagine. And you have really been a real life example of practicing what you preach, and hats off to you. And I know it hadn't been easy. And I know you at times you probably feel like you're putting on a face that's not, true to what the emotions you're feeling, but that's part of emotional intelligence as well,
Right. Yeah. You gotta be the right thing for the right people at the right time. Right. But that requires the self-awareness to know, what do I need to do now? And I need to put on the smile in this situation. I can cry in this one, but I appreciate that, Jason. It's not easy. I don't ever want to make it sound like I'm perfect when it comes to managing my emotions. I don't think anybody is.
I wouldn't believe you if you said you were. So
yeah. So
right.
I mean, I go back to the hand up. I preach this, I teach this, I train to it, but I am not always the best at the practice of having high emotional intelligence. But it is something I've truly, like I said before, I'm passionate about, and I believe that it has such importance in every aspect of your life.
Yeah. And I think it's, the humility piece of it, of any guru out there that's preaching on a topic or a set of topics, and or whether it's around mindset or strategy or whatever it is, emotional intelligence, if they're portraying themselves as being perfect at this and they've got it all right and figured out themselves, I'm probably not going to trust that person, because like you don't become an expert, like you're an expert in this space, but you don't become that and very knowledgeable in it unless you're actually dealing with it yourself. Right. And a lot of the stuff that we do with like this burning the ships mentality, it's 99% of it is stuff I'm still trying to work through myself. And I'm just sharing my thoughts and perspective around experiences I've had. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. And
For sure.
If it can help folks and, further folks' development, then great. That's wonderful.
That's just it. Well, it's been awesome to talk to you about it. And I really enjoy the subject. So it's been easy for me to talk about, but I really appreciate you having me on. This has been great.
And I appreciate you taking the time to be on, man. And like I said, I said in Erin's episode, we're going to do as much as we can with our small platform to promote your, Ayla's foundation and everything like that. And I look forward to, hopefully we can reconnect somewhere, play some golf somewhere along the way. But I really enjoy getting to know you, and I appreciate your perspective on all of this. So.
Well, thank you. I'd love the opportunity to get out there with you and talk to you about this again, but really been awesome, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Appreciate coming on. Thank you a lot.
Thanks. Bye-bye.